So I got the GoMakeHuman.character creator working in Godot 4, which is actually pretty exciting. The conversion is fairly straightforward and simple, so I'll show you step by step how to update. And I decided not to host the project independently because I don't plan on maintaining it, and I would rather you support the original creator. So I'll put a link to Lex Partison's GitHub and YouTube in the description. I also didn't want to submit the changes since I assume he'll make a new repository for the new version. And I will integrate it into IDKlul, so if you want to download it from there, you can do that instead. So first, I'll download the zip file from the GoMakeHuman repository on GitHub. So download the zip, and once it's done downloading, I'll move it into the working directory and extract the folder. Then I'll open up Godot 4 and import the project.godot file. Import and edit. So now it wants to convert from Godot 3 to Godot 4, and you'll want to click the convert full project, not just the project.godot. So full project. And once it's done converting, you can open it up and let it finish importing all of the resources. Once it's done importing, go ahead and run the project. And instead of file.new, I'll use FileAccess and call the openCompressed from the static method and change that to FileAccess.read. Then run it again. So this will be the same. Use FileAccess instead of file. So I'll run it again. And now it's trying to open up the generated data file from the meshes. This was generated in Godot 3, and now it's trying to read it with Godot 4, so basically the file has been corrupted. It says there's the invalid index on the transform 3D, but the meshes shapes should be a dictionary instead. So I'll need to open up the meshes for gen folder and open up the generate.tscn scene file. So in the generate scene, first they change the order of the resource saver .save parameters. So you'll pass the mesh instance and then the file path as the second parameter. And at the bottom, I'll call FileAccess to open the data file. Now, instead of running the whole project, I just want to run the generate.tscn. So I'll use this button instead. Now it says there's no add surface from arrays function on the mesh object. That's because it needs to be ArrayMesh now. So I'll change the mesh object type and run the scene again. Now it says there's no getData function on the load image object. So instead of that, use the static image.load from file with the string. And now it's trying to find the shape keys on the mesh objects. So if you open up the meshes for gen folder and double click on any of the meshes in that folder, so the body, dress, etc., there's nothing in the display pane. And if you try to add it to a 3D scene, you can see that there's nothing there. So I need to regenerate the mesh files in the meshes for gen folder. So if you select the body.glb, which is an object file, and under the import settings, you used to be able to generate the meshes as a separate file directly from the import settings. So that option isn't here anymore, but if you go to the advanced settings instead on the body.glb, and you could also just double click on that file, then in the import settings, once it's done importing the scene, you can see all of the meshes in here. So go to the meshes tab, and for each mesh there is an option to save to file. So I will enable that and then set the path, navigate to the meshes for gen, and select all files. So this is the 123 dress mini. Save as mini.mesh. So use the .mesh extension and tell it to overwrite the existing file. So I'll go ahead and do that for all of them. So this just ensures that you won't have to re-import each of the scenes individually. Otherwise, you could open it up and save the resource. But if you have a lot of clothing, that of course would be very tedious. So it's kind of annoying to do initially, but then it should save your settings if you change the initial object. Okay. So that's all of them. Now if you hit the reimport, I'll let that run. So now when you double click on these mesh files in the editor, you can see that they show up in the display pane, and if you add them now to a 3D scene, you can see that they are rendering properly. So now I'll run the generate scene again. Now it can't multiply a vector 2 by a vector 2i, and the texture size is a vector 2i, so I'll cast this as a regular vector 2 and paste that in all three places where it multiplies the vertex UV. And I'll run it again. So it's definitely made it further. This needs to be ArrayMesh.new. So I'll run it again. And it looks like I need to switch the order of the parameters on the resource saver.save. And now hopefully it should successfully generate the mesh. So it popped up briefly, and as you can see, it generated the clothing and body and eyes meshes successfully. So now I can run the main project again. So now I'll run the main scene with the arrow, and so this needs to be ArrayMesh.new, and I'll run it again. This has been crashing my computer, so as I debug it, but now it is actually working without throwing any errors. So now I just need to fix the actual character view. So in the default environment.tress in the file browser, I'll change the sky value, set the sky material to procedural sky material, and I'll increase the energy multiplier up to 2. So now if I run it again, we have the lighting and background fixed. And obviously now I need to fix the mesh. So I'll open up the character scene under car edit, and by default there is no mesh here, but in the code I can see that I add the body.scene as a child of the skeleton. So if I do that, you can see that it sort of crumples in. So if you select the skeleton node and click skeleton 3D, then you can reset all bone poses, and now the character is standing up correctly. And So now if I run it again, you can see the character in the editor, and if I change the values, you can see that it is changing the mesh. So the clothes also work. I just need to add the skins now. Also, I need to delete this body mesh from the skeleton so it doesn't override the one that it generates dynamically. So I was just using that as a demonstration. So now in the car edit meshes folder, there are a bunch of scenes for the body and clothes. So I'll open up the body scene and click on the mesh, then open up the mats folder under the meshes and drag the woman.tress resource into the surface material override. So you can see it applies the skin. So I'll do that for the dress. And the eyes. And the jeans. So the jeans and the shirt share a material. And finally the male shirt. And theoretically you could assign these to different materials in game, so we can have different skin colors and eye colors. But now when I run the project, I can apply the clothes and change the sliders. So it looks like everything is working for the most part. I didn't do the open and save functions, and the animations didn't seem to import correctly either. So it's not 100% working, but at least you can change the mesh and use it in the scene. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching and have a great day.